now that okay, great. Yes, so for anyone who can't make it, we will be able to share this exciting chat with them. Yeah, so welcome everyone. First, let me introduce myself. If you don't know me, I'm Jill McArdle from Friends of the Earth Europe. I work on corporate accountability, so business and human rights and environmental and climate obligations for corporations at the EU level and the UN level. Yes, and I'm joined today by three co-hosts, Sylvia from ECCJ and Nicholas from ETUC, and my colleague Yvonne, who is kindly doing technical support for us as well, all of which have been super involved in getting this campaign off the ground. So we're all very excited to be talking to you today about it. I have the agenda up in front of me, so I will just briefly present the agenda, and after that, I'm going to give a presentation to start off on the campaign. Yeah, maybe a couple of points to note. First of all, if you can indicate your name and your organization in your Zoom name, that would be great. We won't do a round of introductions. There's a lot of people here, but just so people can see who you are in case you have a question later, for example. And yes, so this is the welcome part. Next, I will give a brief presentation on the campaign, or I'll try to be brief. Then we are really excited to have two guest speakers here today because we thought it would be more interesting than just us talking about the campaign, to actually have people from outside the campaign come with existing experiences of good citizen mobilizations and activism to talk about why that is important. So our first guest speaker will be Maria Paulik from the Kreni Promeni movement in Serbia, who successfully campaigned against the Rio Tinto's lithium mines there. After that, we'll have a little time for questions to the speaker. Then we will have a presentation by our colleague Nicholas from ETUC on the campaign demands and objectives. Then we're really excited to have Ugandan climate activists to join us to also talk about the importance of mobilization for climate and other issues. We'll have a short moment for questions there too. And then Sylvia from ECCJ will talk through the key moments in the political process, the next steps, how to join the campaign. And then with what the time we have left, we will have a Q&A. So you may have questions after the first presentation. I would ask that you put those questions in the chat, and then we will come back to all those questions at the end, where you'll also be free to raise your hand and ask questions as well. So with that, I'm trying to keep an eye. I think we are 81 now. That's great. Yeah, with that, I will move on to giving a presentation about the campaign. Here we go. So yes, this presentation is split throughout the agenda. So I will first speak about the background to the campaign and the overall thinking behind the campaign, and a bit about the strategies and structure. And later on, Nicholas will speak about the demands of the campaign, and then later Sylvia will speak about the process, the legislative process that we're doing this campaign for. So firstly, yeah, you can see our nice new logo there. So yeah, so a little bit about the campaign history. Let me keep track of the time. So we, ETUC and ECCJ and Friends of the Earth and several other groups had a smaller campaign a couple of years ago when the European Commission first announced that it was going to bring forward this mandatory human rights and environmental due diligence. We all think, I won't go into the background of what due diligence is. I think most of you know that, and you know what this legislation is. And we have been working on this for a long time. So when there was a consultation at the EU level, we decided we needed to mobilize citizens and more voices than outside the due diligence bubble to demand a stronger law. So this is something that we did during the EU consultation, and we mobilized in the end, with the help of another campaign, over 500,000 responses to that consultation, calling for a really strong due diligence law. Yeah, we had over 150 supporting organizations of that smaller campaign. And in the end, we handed over all of those signatures and demands to Commissioner Reinders. who we demanded take those into account in making this proposal. As you also probably know, we finally got the EU's due diligence proposal after several delays, which were quite worrying. We finally got that proposal in February of this year. And while we were very, very happy to get the proposal, we were also quite worried that it really had a lot of loopholes and problems and seems to have been weakened by the business lobby. We won't go into demands or into the content too much, but for example, the due diligence obligations itself is far weaker than we would like to see it. The access to justice issue is not sufficiently addressed. Climate and environment obligations are quite weak. And of course, not enough companies are covered by the legislation. So it was really clear that the business lobby had worked quite hard to weaken this, and that voices against mandatory due diligence had succeeded in weakening the legislation. We also know that, for example, the Regulatory Scrutiny Board of the European Commission, which is supposed to be an oversight body, really listened to the business lobbies and allowed them to influence it to weaken the legislation. So a lot of reasons to be happy that it came, but also a lot of reasons to be worried about the process going forward, because we really have a twofold task ahead, which is to strengthen a legislation which is not strong enough now, but also to protect the components that need to be protected, because not only do we need to strengthen it, but we need to stop it getting weakened as the process for the law goes forward. I won't say anything about the process going forward because Sylvia will talk about that later, but we are looking at a 1 to 2 year negotiation process at EU level until we finally have a law. So there's a lot of work still to do on this. We know we have a lot of allies to make a strong law, but we also know we have a lot of enemies of a strong law lurking behind the scenes too. We know that the business lobby is not done with its work. So even though we've done a lot of great advocacy and we've brought a wealth of expertise and NGO experience on cases, etc., to bear in the decision-making process here, we also realize that we need to mobilize public pressure beyond just the advocacy that we're doing if we want a strong law, that it will not be enough to bring our good arguments to the decision makers, that they need to feel the pressure at the member state level in their constituencies, whether it's at the council or MEPs. This will be really crucial in this process because it will not be easy to strengthen this law and to stop it from being weakened. So this is why we decided, despite already being super busy with an advocacy process, that we needed a public-facing campaign. So here is our website, which the teaser website just launched last week, which we're very excited about, and our shiny logos as well. If I could say something about the name of the campaign, so justice is everybody's business. We discussed a lot what the name of the campaign could be, and we really felt that we needed the word justice to be there because, it might seem that justice is about, when harms have already happened, but really justice, we think, encapsulates everything about the process, from the prevention aspect all the way through to remedy when there is a harm, because it is about not only remedying harm, but ensuring that this never happens again. So this is why the word justice was extremely central to us and something we thought this public-facing campaign could bring as a concept into this process really strongly. If I could say a little bit about the strategies that we want to bring to bear in the campaign. So we have 3 main strategies: inspire, activate, and expose. And the thinking behind this, is to, on the one hand, to be kind of getting out of the due diligence bubble of technical language and really trying to communicate the broader vision to show what a positive impact this law could have. So going beyond, we get very nitty-gritty technical on due diligence because it is a very complicated subject. And we wanted to be making creative materials, bringing real-life stories in a compelling way into the discussion, to the media, to decision makers, and to citizens to get them excited and to get them to realize that this is an issue that is not technical, is not nerdy. It is really about really important things and values that everybody shares. The second step of that then would be that we actually activate people to build public pressure to show that there is widespread demand for a strong law. So that means getting outside of our own normal circles and organizing larger mobilizations and activating other parts of the public that are not normally engaged in this. For example, youth activists or church groups, or parliamentarians, to really show that this is an issue that affects everybody and that there are lots of people engaged and demanding this. And finally, we want to expose and debunk. So do the work of communicating why the many arguments against this law, whether it is about the impact on SMEs or about costs or about competitiveness, why these are harmful narratives, why these are not true, why these are not in keeping with citizens' overall values. Yes, so a little bit about the structure of the campaign then. So we have a steering group. Keep an eye on the time. Okay, so we have a steering group, and the steering group will work closely with a campaign coordinator. I'm excited to say that we hired a campaign coordinator just this week, so they will be starting. They're not in place yet, so we unfortunately couldn't have them here in this webinar, but they will be starting before September. So the idea being that this campaign coordinator would do the work of liaising between the steering group and the supporting organizations and all of the working groups of the campaign as well, and really driving the campaign forward. We have 3 working groups: messaging, actions, and outreach. I won't say too much about those, and I think Sylvia can explain a bit more about how to get involved in all that later, but this will be where the bulk of the activities, planning, and action happens, and all organizations are invited to join those working groups to actually create the activities of the campaign. You're also free to just be have information disseminated to you and be be an amplifier to just share information. You're also very much invited to actually be part of the work of creating the messaging and the actions and activities and doing the outreach of the coalition, the campaign. A little bit on our steering group. So at the moment we have CIDSE, ECCHR, ECCJ, the ETUC, the French Coalition for Corporate Accountability, and Friends of the Earth Europe. The steering group is open to new members. So if you are interested, you are free to contact us to apply to be on the steering group as well. And the goal of the steering group is really to drive forward, again, the work of the campaign. And finally, let me see if I missed anything. It's a lot of information, but of course I probably missed something, and you're free to ask questions in the chat that we will answer later. But yes, I'll end on this slide then. This is our ticker, which is counting down live on our new website to September 6th, when we will launch the campaign. And Sylvia will say a bit more about that. So I will stop there for now. I'm going to check the chat quickly. Okay. We'll stop there now. And as I said, please put your questions in the chat. I see that people already are. That's great. And now I'm going to jump ahead to our first speaker. And I'm going to go back to the agenda for that. Yes, so I'm going to hand over now to Maria Paulik from Crenny Promeni, who's going to speak about their experiences mobilizing and campaigning in Serbia. So Marina.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and really glad that I can be here with you today. Maybe before I start, I can give you a little bit of context in which we are working. So Crenny Promeni is a pretty much young organization. We exist for 2 years now. In our work, we mix digital organizing and community organizing approach. We are multi-issue and mostly focused on rule of law, ecology, corruption, and topics like that, but we are not focused only on those. What you need to know as a context is that whatever we do, usually the process is pretty much the same. We start the process by starting petition on our platform. After that, we are pushing for that topic in media. We are making plenty of actions in order to make really hard time for decision makers. And usually this is how we switch the power. Like, this is how we are making changes, and we are making them on a local level. For example, saving the park of some investitor, or we are doing it on the large scale and national level. So back to the topic that why we are here and the campaign about Rio Tinto. When we started to work on this campaign 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about Rio Tinto and lithium mining. I just heard about it. I heard that can make a lot of bad things in Serbia, and I just started to talk about that. And what we did, as always, we started a petition against, and we realized, because every time when you start a petition, you can see how people are passionate about it. So in just 1 year and a half, we got around 300,000 people who signed the petition against. So that was a sign that people were really passionate about it. They were really scared about it. In the meantime, we did a lot of communication, like protests across the country, and you could see the people who, for example, approaching me, showing me the pictures of their cows who are dead on their own land because they drank some water that was poisoned. Guys who were getting cancer because they took the water from their own land again that was poisoned because of the mining, and things like that. And when you see that, you don't feel well, because on the other side, you have the ruling party who is ruling the country. And you have Rio Tinto, who was paying a lot of money to the national media, playing the advertisement that they will give the prosperity and everything best to the Serbia people. So what we did, one of the first points that we did, we did a plenty of actions. I will share the screen one. I have just one slide just to show you the timeline again. And let's do it like this. So on the first picture, you can see on the left top corner, you can see like we did one giving the red card to Rio Tinto in front of their office and saying goodbye, we don't want you here. And that was in the, maybe in May last year. After that, we had plenty of protests, everything was happening. As I said, like they had advertisement on the national media, and because we didn't have that money, you need to pay around 1 million of dinars, like to pay only 30 seconds of advertisement on TV show. And we didn't have the money. We said, okay, because we don't have that money, let's make 30 seconds advertisement, ask for money from donations of people in our country, and make contra advertisement and show what Rio Tinto is actually gonna do in our country. And what happened is that we made that advertisement. They didn't give us permission to put it on national TV with donations of people. And we played that advertisement in front of TV station. There was 2,000 people on that event, but in just one day, we had more than 1 million of people who watched the advertisement when we put it online. So that was a huge start when like everybody were involved and in the topic. They wanted to see what Rio Tinto is actually doing. That was catching the attention. In the meantime, government was doing another thing. They were introducing at the same week when that was happening, they said next week, we're gonna adopt 2 laws. One is expropriation law, by which they could take your land in 2 weeks period. And if they announce it that is a state land that can be used by state and can have benefit of states. So people were against, are really scared. There was a second law, a referendum and citizen initiative law that was going to adopt. And we had protests day by day in order not to happen that. But whatever we did, we were on the streets every day. There was 10, 20, 30,000 people every day. They did nothing. They adopted the first law, and they were announcing they will adopt the second law. So that put us in the position that we need to do more radicalization. And what we did, we basically on one of those Wednesdays said, if you adopt that law on Thursday, we're gonna go and blockade the main roads of Serbia on Saturday for 1 hour. And if you do that after that, we're gonna do it for 2 hours, and week by week, weeks after week after that, we're gonna do it continuously until you withdraw those 2 laws. So what basically happened, they didn't adopt the second law. That was good. They said they will do it next week because most probably they were curious, what are we going to do? And the second picture was the picture what happened the first Saturday. So this is Kreni Promeni team surrounded with 40 policemen because our strategy was like, go on the roads, tell us which road you will block. We put the map of all the roads. People were telling us what roads they will block. We just put the pictures of the whole country. And we said, don't go together, like go in small groups, because then they cannot catch us all together at the same point. So like we said, we did it as well. So this was a team of 10 of us from Kreni Promeni. And because they knew that we were one of the organizers, they sent 40 policemen around us. And at that point, I really thought like, this is over. We're going to be in jail because they said that they will put us in prison. This was, of course, a legal thing to do. And that at that moment in the middle, I was watching the Instagram photos and I saw that many people came out on the street at the very same moment. And you can see the picture number 3. That was at that moment. Like, this was one of the main roads in Belgrade that was catched by people who came from different sides, because of course they don't have that many policemen to catch us all. This was like the first week, but the fourth picture, you could see this is only one of many roads. This was like one of the main roads, in the same one, as you can see up. Like there was around 30 to 40,000 people on only that one road. And there was many places in Belgrade that were like that. And many more than 50 towns across the Serbia that was happening at the same time. That was the second bit. So we had 2 hours blockading the road. As you can see on the picture number 5, we were not like violent. We were just trying to send a message that we don't want to break the law. We just want to be fair, to have the fair law, and we were letting go the ambulance and everybody that had issues, like to go through the mess. And that was one of the messages that we wanted to send. As a result, we got a call from president who was saying that he will withdraw the first law, the second law, and that he will change the second one that they already adopted in the way that we are asking for, if we stop the blockades. So that basically happened, but that was still not the end of Rio Tinto. So people continued to push for withdrawal of the spatial plans that were giving them position, that were putting Rio Tinto in the position that they could actually still working everything they already done. And after a lot of fight and a lot of protests, they basically withdrawn those 2 spatial plans as well. So by that, Rio Tinto was basically out of the country. They couldn't do anything, but all of that was happening before elections in Serbia. And this is an important fact, because we all knew that before elections, they will say, oh, okay, we will stop it. But after elections, they will again put it on the scene. And that is basically happening right now. So they are again bringing the narrative, oh, we made a mistake, we need lithium mining, and like they are bringing them back on the scene. So in order to change that, we were collecting, so my time is out, we were collecting signatures for citizen initiative in order to actually change the law and stop lithium mining for, yeah, for sure. I will stop here and then you can ask whatever you want.
Great, thank you so much, Marina, and for timing yourself. Very appreciated. So yeah, we thought it would be nice between the speakers to open up space for questions, but you can also ask questions at the end. So yeah, if you have anything, you can raise your hand now. And if not, that's also okay. We can go to, I'm just going to give people a second. Sometimes people reflect for a moment. But if not, I think we can jump on, which is great, to our campaign demands presentation. I'll just wait. just some thanks in the chat. So great. Okay, thank you, Marina. And I think I'm going to jump over to Nicholas now. Nicholas, are you able to share slides? Do you need us to do that?
I can share as well. No, it would be better if you can share it, actually. That would be better.
No problem.
So I can
just
see
tell
my
me when
notes.
to jump.
Yeah. So I hope you can all hear me, and also the sounds outside. I'm here with the open window, so if every now and then you hear some alarms, that's coming from outside. First of all, thanks again to you, Marina. Very inspiring campaign. Also to see how many, not only to see how many people you've mobilized, but also to see that you could bring about a real legislative change at the end. Congratulations from my side. It was very, very inspiring to see that. So my name is Niklas Franke. I'm working for the European Trade Union Confederation, the ETUC, where I'm a project officer, mostly working in projects related to democracy at work, so workers' involvement in the broader sense. And although we also do some campaigning and advocating with photo actions with our members, breakfast events and MEPs, I would say there's a little bit of a difference in the way that we as trade unions actually approach or campaign. And I think it was for me a very, very learning point, a very good moment to kind of learn from also the NGO landscape that is working a little bit differently in that regard, to see how they mobilize their members, how they're campaigning, and to maybe complement each other on an issue that we're actually both fighting for with that we would call, I would say, a big priority, and that is the human rights due diligence file. What I would like to do with you today is to share actually the goals that we have of this campaign, both in a little bit of a broader sense, and then also actually what it means regarding this directive. Jill has said before, we finally got the proposal from the Commission, but of course we're not 100% at ease with it. So we've already spoken a little bit in the way how we've actually organized ourselves, but we haven't really spoken what we would fight for. And that was at a certain point also something that we had to figure out for ourselves when we organized actually a workshop, and to see, okay, actually, where do we find ourselves? What is our common denominator, where we like to go, and how we like to go there? And we kind of found out that, usually what we tend to do is always that we're kind of negative about things, and we tend to criticize, and we tend to say what we actually don't like. And we thought, okay, what about if we turn everything around and try to be positive, and to say, okay, what would actually be our vision? What would be the perfect world that we would like to live in? And that's what I would like to explain a little bit to you. So first of all, we currently live in a world, of course, where the business profit interests overpower everything. So that is, we also kind of tend to find it legitimate to say that, well, businesses is the only pursuit that they have is to make more profits. Well, imagine a world in which actually the social and the environmental interests would overpower those business profits, and where a company would then actually serve the society. So imagine if this was the ultimate business goal. This would lead to a whole different kind of dogma, and that would then also lead to the fact that you as a consumer, when you buy a product, you can actually say, okay, I'm buying this, and I can be sure that this product hasn't caused any harm before. Well, we also know that this is not the case right now, and the reality is that companies do get away with it. They sell products that have caused harm before, that took advantage of other people and other people's rights, and they even cross the legal borders, so to say, and they get away with it. And that is a little that is our problem, because what we would like to have is some sort of accountability, and to say, well, we want to make sure that the governments make sure that people and the planets are actually shielded and protected from those corporate abuses, and that the companies don't stand above the law. And this would then, of course, also come with a change of behavior. It would mean that there's a whole different dogma than at the end for businesses, but it would also change the processes inside the company. And it would lead, I would say, to a more democratic and a more bottom-up approach in the companies, where then workers and victims would also be empowered to demand their rights. Okay, so we have this perfect vision of the perfect world, and we then think, well, I would actually not bet money that we could change the world with just one directive, but maybe we can have a little step closer to what we would actually like to have. And so when we say what is the main goal of our campaign, or with regards to this directive, is that we want the EU to adopt a strong corporate accountability law that obliges companies to respect human rights and the environment, and it makes them liable for the negative impacts throughout the value chain. And second, we want that this law gives victims and affected people, including workers and their representatives, remedy and access to European and national courts. Okay, now you can change the slide. What does this actually mean for the directive? I guess you all are very familiar also with the concept of due diligence. So I'm always in those type of seminars, never really sure how much to go into detail. But of course, if I'm a little bit too broad, you can also ask questions, or if you didn't understand anything, you can also ask questions later. So first of all, most important for us is the actual scope of this directive, because we want that it covers all companies, as certain national legislations do. But currently, the proposal at EU level would only cover about 1% of European businesses. There's an exemption for all SMEs. And me personally, for example, I don't know why McDonald's should not be covered with this directive just because it's a franchise system. Second, if we want to have strict obligations to prevent and to end the harms, so it should not only be a box-ticking exercise. We want that there's civil liability and parent lead companies for harms in their global value chains, and that there should be no loopholes or exemptions. And I think, I was just explaining before our vision to say that we don't want companies to be above the law, and I think that liability is here a very key point, and that companies must be held liable for if we want to really trigger a change. Next point, and that is very, very important, I would say personally for me as a trade unionist, is we want to make sure that trade unions can bargain collectively and workers' representatives are involved in the due diligence process in every step. Why is that important for us? Well, we think that actually, there's a lot of evidence on the table that if you have good social dialogue, if you have good workers' representation inside the company, that this also benefits both the profits, actually, or the productivity of the company, as well as the working conditions. So it's a win-win situation for both, and it's, in my eyes, also a very democratic principle that should also be installed in the workplace. And then maybe some employers may say, okay, this takes a lot of time and this costs money, but so does external consultancy do. And I think there is maybe no better consultant than the workers inside the companies, because they know the company as best than any external consultants. Next point, we want to have binding climate obligations on companies to reduce the greenhouse emissions in the whole value chain. There should be a reference to the Paris Agreement, and I think our next speaker is from the Fridays for Future movement, and he will share his experience, and I'm very much looking forward actually to also learn from his campaign in this regard. Next point, we want to have an obligation to conduct due diligence for all business relationships along the whole value chain. You may know that currently this is only the case according to the directive to so-called established business relationships, and I think that this term is very unclear, and it should be defined a bit more in a better way that is more understandable and more reliable. We also we spoke about it before. We want to ease the burdens on affected people, trade unions, and civil society seeking justice in the EU courts. When you, as a worker, for example, when you were harmed during the production process for any kind of product, well, it shouldn't be actually on you then in court to prove that this harm that was caused to you is because you were working in one of the steps in the production of a product. No, it should actually be on the company to show that they have done everything to prevent that this harm would occur to you. We think that this is just a simple question of balance of power, actually, and I think this reversal of burden of proof is very important to us. Then also, we want that all the affected people are actually consulted in every step to ensure that there's a consent when it's needed. So we also want the stakeholder involvement here. This is a very, very important point for us. And also this point was actually in the European Parliament report before the directive came out, the proposed directive. And finally, of course, we need a directive that also has tooth. So the enforcement agencies with teeth should be able to investigate and to give proper sanctions to companies. So I think I've gone more or less in time through all of the points. And of course, if you have any further questions, I think we'll first have the next speaker, Jill, if I'm correct, if I have to remember right in mind. So I would then hand over maybe to the next speaker from the Fridays for Future movement. And if you have questions, you can ask them later.
Great.
Hi, Nyombi.
Thanks. Yes, thanks a lot, Nicholas. And I think that was such a good point that we know that this legislation is not the solution, the last solution to every problem in the world, but we think it can make such an important contribution to the broader goals that we have, while not being like the final thing that we need to do. And I think on one very important point, for example, on climate, this legislation can make a huge contribution if it can be made stronger than it is now. And so we're very excited to have Nyombi Morris here. A lot of you probably know that in Uganda, there is, as well as in Tanzania, there is a big Total project with other businesses, have a big, massive oil pipeline. It is an absolute disaster, and there's human rights violations and huge climate risks happening. It really shows the intersection of climate, environment, and human rights as well. And there are a lot of people mobilizing to do something about this. So we're really excited to have Nyombi here to talk with us about the problems there and the importance of mobilization. So yeah, I'll hand over to you now.
Hi, everyone. Jill, is my voice clear?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marine. And I like the way you mobilize, actually, Marina. Like you managed to bring all those people on street. I was so happy to hear that, because for us in Africa, we have been trying that and it has failed completely because of maybe the threats and the power our leaders have, so they don't allow us to come to street. So I'm here to tell about my story. Back in 2019, when I joined activism in my country, we had a lot of challenges concerning deforestation, unemployment, youth inclusivity. So when I realized that I was a victim to climate change, I had to start doing something for my community where I come from, because as me, I'm from a very humble background and I was raised with a single mom of 3. So life has not been easy ever since we shifted to Kampala. So when I saw one of our activists here standing on street, I was scared. I was like, how comes, where does she get the audacity to stand on street? Because here, when you stand on street, definitely you become a criminal because you are challenging the government that doesn't want anyone to stop them from whatever they want to do. So I started mobilizing. I joined Fridays for Future International. They taught me a lot about activism, copying from how they are organizing events in Global North. I started organizing them with Fridays for Future Uganda. we started visiting schools, educating them about climate change, and also how to peacefully demonstrate about it, because we want them to become a solution to the existing challenges concerning climate change. And also we want to show them what power they have to challenge this leadership or any kind of politics that is not good. So we started this in 2019, kept on going. In 2020, that's where the breakout came, when I was suspended on Twitter because of standing up for one of the forests known as Bugoma Forest. By then it was under attack, and they wanted to sell it and give it to a sugarcane company known as Hoima Sugar. So when we saw that, we are not happy with it, because we as activists, we believe that we can only protect the current natural resources that we have, but we cannot bring more or bring new ones, because forests can only be planted if you are willing, but we don't have leaders who are willing to plant more forests. So we have to keep the one that are available. So we started talking about it, and in just 1 week, when I was invited for a TV show, I came back to post about it. I didn't know that I was followed up. So they banned me on Twitter for 1.5 months. I didn't give up, because I knew what I was talking about was right. Maybe that's why they are silencing me. I wasn't alone. There are some other activists, but mine took long, like 2 months. So from there, I started saying, no, I think I should stop talking about it. Let me start protecting our forests. I went on, I started working with communities, asking them what are the main challenges and how are we going to make sure these forests are protected. So we started refilling all the missing spaces, so that when those people who are planning to sell off come and discover that trees are there, they may feel ashamed of selling this forest. However, yeah, that worked somehow, but because of lack of finance, we had to put it aside and continue with other projects. That's why we jumped on EACOP, East Africa Crude Oil Pipeline. This pipeline is coming from Uganda heading to Tanzania, and today it has already kicked off. But there are some things that need to be sorted out, and this starts from protecting the lives of the human rights defenders, because we activists, we call ourselves human rights defenders because we stand up for people also. Activists in my country have been receiving threats. Me, apart from being silenced on Twitter, in 2021, last year in March, I was arrested for unrest protesting. This year in March again, they started trolling me because I organized a strike in Eastern Uganda, where I went to school and showed young people about EACOP and why we should fight it. Young people were excited. So when they saw me, like I was in school and I'm trying to open young people's eyes about this project, after a tweet I made, they started following me. They came to my home. They wanted to arrest me, but unfortunately I wasn't there because mom told me there are some people who are looking for you. Don't come back. So from that day, I've been hiding at my sister's place. I know I will not tell you the location for my safety, but I had to leave home in April. But one thing I can tell you is mobilizing in Global North is quite easy compared to one in Global South. Because today, this project itself is bad from day one. Because one, when they discovered that there was oil, they started setting up plans on how they are going to transfer it away. So the landowners were forced to sell off their land. And once you refuse, the little penny they give you, they will look for the way of removing you or chasing you by force. We are seeing a number of people from Western Uganda evacuating, coming to Kampala. Some are giving us stories that are heartbreaking. Some people are saying they were not consulted about this project, but they are being forced to sell off their land to allow these pipelines to go through. Others are saying there are a lot of conflicts that are happening, and these conflicts have been set up by the government. They just start setting up some conflicts whereby people are being killed at night. They just come and kidnap you and say they don't know who kidnapped these people. But at night, always it is another world. Like, people are losing a lot of lives in these projects. And when we come out and speak up, they look at us as criminal. Like, they look at us people who are trying to challenge the development, because for them, they call it development. But for us, we want to ask them, if it is development, why are you brutalizing people who owns the land? Why is it that you have failed to sit down with these people and discuss the way forward before you proceed? Because today you are using energy that is not justice. And for us, we are looking for justice in everything, including nature and justice for humanity. So we have been pushing up for this, but for me, I was stopped from doing that from Amnesty. They told me, for your safety, Maurice, you should stop talking about it. And I've been out of the project for over 2 months. But what we need is, we need to hold large corporations accountable, like Total. Total is one of the companies that are fueling this project. And because they can't come direct, they use government to silence us. So government has a lot of troops, has a lot of people that are within, which we don't even know. They can arrest you anytime, they can kidnap you anytime, they can even kill you anytime, because these people in Western Uganda have told us they have lost families, they have lost family members just because they are insisting to stay on the land that they are telling them that have to evacuate by all means. So when you insist, at night, you may wake up when your neighbor is nowhere to be seen. You may think he has gone to work, maybe, or in the garden, when they have gone. So that's what is happening in Uganda. And it is just a beginning, because we don't know what might happen. Today, I can't move far away from my home.
Thank you, Nyambi. Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for bringing that perspective. And I think we all wish you safety there, and that you stay safe. And we really appreciate your bravery in speaking out about these things, given the risks that you face to do that. And I think that was a really important point that you made, that mobilizing in the global north is easy in comparison to what people around the world face when they try to do this. So we should all feel extremely motivated to do this here. Yeah, and for bringing, and I think it was really important to bring both perspectives from Serbia and from Uganda of what it's like to really face big corporations and what they want to do, and the importance of fighting back, and the on the ground issues that we face, because it really gets lost, I think, in the Brussels debate or in the capitals when we get down to the nitty-gritty of a negotiation process where we're arguing between the left and the right over certain technical details of the legislation. We tend to easily forget that this is really about what is happening on the ground to real people every day. So it is so important that to have people brave enough to come and share those perspectives. And I hope that we can continue working together on ECOP and on this campaign going forward. So now, thank you again. And I think there's some more people in the chat who also want to say thank you. I actually looking for questions in the chat as well. Claire asks a question to Nyambi: what else can we do to support your struggles? So maybe you want to say something about that.
First of all, we will need immunity, like we need backup, because apart from Amnesty that came in, otherwise I wouldn't survive, because I didn't have food, I didn't have like support. Amnesty happened to help me with some money for at least 2 months, May and June. So we need immunity whereby we can speak and we have your back, like you have our back. You can support us anytime when we need you, because that is the only thing we lack right now. Because today, if something happens to me, you may not know. Also, the second thing is to make sure you create awareness in your country about what your companies are doing. Today, I'm talking about ECOP because of Total, but there is other companies like Coca-Cola. They are polluting, they are throwing plastics everywhere because they're no longer selling drinks. And I was in Europe, I was in US, and I saw these companies are selling drinks in metallic cans. In Africa, they are selling in plastics. So everywhere, as like all our landfill, they are covered now with plastics. we are not only challenging Coca-Cola, Pepsi, we are also challenging companies that are carrying out oil drilling, that are carrying out mining. So make sure you create awareness in your country about what your companies are doing. I'm on preparation to release a petition on graphite mining. There is a British company called Brinker Resources. It was granted a 21-year license to start graphite mining in northern Uganda, but they have failed to give us how are we going to benefit, because Kitgum as a district where this thing is going to happen, there have been a lot of cases concerning women violence. So we want to know how are they going to manage to carry out this mining without people suffering, because we expect the number to go high.
Thank you, Nyombe. Actually, I think we have another question. I'm going to jump to Helen from the Danish 92 group. Helen, can you hear me? If you want to ask your question, you can.
Yes, thank you. I can hear you. And thank you, first, Nyombe, very much for sharing your story and for letting us know how it is to work with these real problems in your real situations. My question is along, because you might know that right now there is an ongoing UN high-level political forum working with the assessing the implementation of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And tomorrow I'm going to be on a panel discussing partnerships with civil society, like I would be representing civil society, with companies and with government towards ensuring that civil society sort of has a say and towards a more sustainable development. I would love if you or if anyone else on this forum, but from your experience, would you have a message that you would like to present in such a, or to pass on to such a forum, to the UN on this occasion on this specific matter? Because I think my point is going to be a little bit about how far we are from actually having a basis for partnerships when this is the reality out there. So, but I would love to hear what you would say if you were there or someone else with a similar approach to this, and I would pass it on if it's at all possible for me. And thank you.
Go ahead, Nyombe, if you want to answer.
Yes, I didn't get the question very well. Is it partnership? I was trying to figure out the question.
I think it was that Helen is speaking at this UN high-level political forum, which has companies and civil society and others, and she was asking what message you would want brought to that. I don't know if Helen, you want to say again what the specific purpose of the forum discussion is to.
This specific one is, there's a lot of different things, but this specific one that we're having tomorrow is on how can civil society, governments, and private sectors sort of join forces for more sustainable development. And the setting is like that we can do that easily if we just want. If everyone gives a little bit, we can sort of make that happen. So yeah, it would be nice to sort of have. Oh, it's just an opportunity if you have any kind of message as to how you see that from your perspective, because you're there and you're one of those that we kind of speak on behalf of from civil society organizations.
First, my message maybe to that forum will be is to respect your words whenever you see it, because we have realized that many discussions have been put in place, but they end in words or on social media or in articles. If I was there, I don't think I'll make any change unless maybe you can tell them that whatever you discuss, put it into implementation, because we are continuing to suffer. And for the organizations that might be there, tell them to respect like the rights of indigenous people that are protecting their land in their one. Like they are struggling to make their land safe, but you continue to invest billions of money in our governments that are being used recklessly to destroy again our future and our natural resources. So my message will be, we have seen Paris Agreement is actually, we don't see results from Paris Agreement since 2015, and this meeting continue to happen. I don't know the meeting is going to be about what, but I believe whatever will be discussed, let us put it into implementation before COP, because I saw a headline somewhere that Bangladesh, by COP27, they will not be there. So what are we waiting?
May I add to that? I don't know, is it okay to add? Jill.
Sure. Who is that? Is that Marie? I don't know.
Marina,
Oh, it's Marina.
yeah,
Sorry, I
Marina.
could not see who was speaking.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
I would just say that, like, my message would be, you cannot be green in one country if you make harm to others. Like, I somehow totally feel you, Naomi, because I feel like Serbia is Africa in Europe, because we are not part of EU. Everything can happen in Serbia, but not in other countries. So you have the situation in which they are planning 40 mines in small Serbia like this, but neither one in other countries. And all of them are having lithium as well. So, like, I think this balance of, like, where you are taking the resources and how you are doing it, if it is equal, if all the countries are doing it, part of it, it will be okay, but not to harm one in order to be green in another.
Thanks a lot, Marina. I think those are two really important points. Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal of what we're doing here is to make companies respect human rights and respect the environment, and yes, and to not do something in one part of the world that they would not do in another part, and to be regulated everywhere properly. And yes, and also in Serbia, whether it's Serbia or Uganda, you have the same issue that companies think if they're not in their home country, they can do as they please. So thank you so much for bringing that perspective. Yes, and if anyone wants to follow up offline as well, we will be happy to do that. Please get in touch with us. Okay, so thank you so much for that. So I think we will go now to Sylvia, our colleague from ECCJ, who's going to speak about the next steps. Sylvia, do you want me to share screen, or can you?
I think I can do it. If the host would enable me to share my screen, please. Well, while I get the permission. Yeah, there it is. Oh, I have so many tabs open, but let me try to. Whoop. Well, I think and maybe share it to you because I think I have lost. Oh no, I have the slides here. Sorry, I was captured by the stories of Nyombi and Marina.
Always a good sign.
So I kind of forgot to do my my part of the preparation. But yeah, I think it's important also to recall of why it is so special for us to have them invited here. And it's also, as you were saying, Marina and Nyombi, at the very end, these impacts have a global impact. The impacts of corporate abuse are of a global reach. And the directive is a very important tool to hold the corporations accountable where it hurts them the most, where they have their assets, where their headquarters are. So it's one of the many tools that could be in order to hold corporations accountable and bring justice to the people who have been harmed. So these aspects, for instance, of the role of human rights defenders, as yourself, Nyombi, and the role of stakeholders is central to the campaign. And we would like to have, with the help of all of you here present in the room now, in the virtual room, more of those stories being at the center of the debate, because we have seen, and as you mentioned at the beginning, how business lobby has managed to make the conversation about what it's feasible or practical for business to do or not to do, instead of what is really important about the legislation needs to prevent and address the harms that corporations are causing around the world. So yes, well, we have to think of a feasible way of doing this, we cannot lose sight of the goal, and we have to keep reminding that to the policymakers, and that's why it's important to be able to engage citizens in this campaign and to show the power of the people and the voices from the ground, calling into the attention of what it's the objective of this legislation. So to not go any further into the general comments, I'm gonna go straight into where we are in the political process and where are we gonna go, and this is gonna help us frame on what are the possibilities. We want to think together. I think Jill or both Jill and Niklas mentioned that the campaign is decentralized. So there is a steering group and there are some working groups that will take charge of developing the messaging, developing the strategy, the action plan. But ultimately, the richness of the campaign is that it's decentralized and that groups at national level have the freedom to be creative in the way that they pressure their policymakers. We also heard from Marina the importance of connecting the topic to the local level. So they had people who had been directly affected by the lithium mining, and those are powerful stories to tell. Those are people who can get activated and do something about that. So at the very end, regardless of how amazing the strategy is in the top from the steering group and the working groups, if all of you who are in the base are not part of these structures and take leadership into creating the strategies and implementing them at national level, the campaign would not be as solid as it could. So yeah, I just want to reassure or like reiterate that it's important that we work both hand in hand at the national level and from the structure that it's more or less in Europe, but actually it's very virtual, so everywhere in Brussels. So
Sylvia?
the political process, yes.
Can you make the slideshow? Can you hit the slideshow button?
Yes, if I would.
See, your mouse is so close to it.
Sorry. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we are right here. In February, as Jill mentioned already, the Commission published its proposal for the directive on due diligence. And that was after 1 year of many delays that already she mentioned, so I'm not going to go over it. A lot of business pressure to delay, to have a striped of the enforcement parts and of the parts relating to climate, environment, and stakeholder engagement that were part of the proposal of the parliament, that have been part of the academic research done on the matter. So we received a legislative proposal in February that it's rather weak, but it's an important step. So we are now at the stage of that's what it's called the co-legislation process. And this is when, after the Commission has sent its proposal, the European Parliament and the Council start debating it. And right now, before we get to the first committee debates, and I don't know if it's really relevant for everyone, but the jury committee, the legal affairs committee, is the one that it's leading on the file. There are other committees that also will have competences over the file. So we are at this moment in which the parliament is defining the different competences for the committees. And this has been one of the files with the most requests in apparently the history of legislations in the Commission, in the Parliament. And so there are about 9 or 10 committees that have requested some sort of competence. And what we have heard from policymakers is that probably all of this is going to be solved in September. So we are right on time with the launch of the campaign before the process starts and the debate starts really in the parliament level. At the council level, simultaneously, the working party that has been working on this is the Working Party on Company Law. And they have already started under the French presidency an article by article reading in high level, but this has been stalled because there are so many questions from member states, and there are many member states that do not have a national position yet. So We had heard that maybe the Czech presidency will aim for a general approach by the end of the year, and then we heard that that might not be possible, as they see that there are delays in the process of analysis of the different member states. And we see that the further delays will be problematic in the sense of that in the parliament, the legislative term ends in 2024. So we have elections, and the European Parliament is going to be kind of in a wild mode since October next year. So we are running out of time. And at the same time, we are very happy that this is not happening until before September, because that gives us time to create the public pressure and this mass mobilization that it's necessary before we get to what it's called the trialogue negotiations, when both the three institutions are contrasting their versions of the text and negotiating for a final text that would eventually be approved. So this is where we need to increase the pressure. This is the stage where we are now. We have to target parliament, we have to target council, and council is national governments. So that's why working at the national level, it's going to be key. And working with all of you, it's going to be key. And therefore, it's important that at national level, we keep bringing more groups and to work with us and to mobilize citizens. So what are the upcoming activities that we have foreseen in the campaign? In July already, that was last week, 5th of July, there was a release of the teaser of the campaign website that Jill already shared. And there we had the comic launch. We invite you to take a look at the comic launch. And there is a tool for involvement in the website where people, citizens and organizations can get in touch with us and list their email so that they receive information about the launch and the next steps of the campaign. Then in September 6th or 7th, when the official EU campaign will be launched, there will be a full website launch, a call to action, and joint activities on a digital action across Europe, and a Brussels stunt in front of the European institutions with supporting organizations involved. We are still in the process of defining the digital action and the Brussels stunt. So if you want to brainstorm with us, please send an email to Jill so that we can include you in the list of action group. And like that, we can beehive on this, not only on the launch, but also on the other activities that are coming throughout the length of the campaign. And then this is going to be a key moment, the day of action, where we expect to have coordinated mass mobilizations in different member states as well as in Brussels. The dates are still to be defined, but as I mentioned, taking into account the legislative process, this could be either end of the year, depending on how fast the Council and Parliament move in the next months, but ideally beginning of 2023, when we would still be really at that moment before the general approach of the Council and before there is a parliamentary report where the social pressure and the media pressure is going to be very important to make sure that the political decisions that are taken at the very last moment are the ones in the best interest of the public. So these are the upcoming campaign moments, and we're still to define a more specific calendar of events that we hope to co-create with all of you. In order to be involved in this, we will circulate in the chats, and it's on the slides, and some of you have already received the Google Docs form where you can register your organization to become a supporting organization. Then your logo could be portrayed as part of the supporting organizations in the website, but we would need to follow up with you on the logo as a second step after you have registered on the form. It's not possible for some reason, technical reason, I think, to upload the logo already. So we want to have as many organizations as possible already for the launch in September. So spread the voice. And to join the working groups, please write to Jill McCardle at friendsforeurope.org. Her email is also going to be on the chat. If you want to join the Actions Working Group to think together about the actions, messaging, or outreach, about citizens outreach. Maybe on this last, I would like to, or media outreach as well. On this last, I also would like to mention that during the workshops in January, when the campaign started to be conceived, we also identified key target audiences. So it's not possible really to target everyone, a general public in Europe. So there is some work already done in the thinking of who are those that we can activate and that could impulse the change that we need to see. Yeah, welcome to that. And then, I think I passed too quickly. Yeah, I don't know how to go back, but yeah, I think that there was the only last point was about joining the Week of Action. And that's, yeah, once you have been plugged into the supporting organizations or one of the member groups, you will be able to join us in the campaign activities. So I think that with this, we conclude the part of presenting the campaign, but we'll be happy to hear in case that you have questions about the campaign. If you still have more questions for Marina and Nyombi, of course, feel free to address them now. But this webinar also had the purpose of bringing everyone on board on the same page. This is where we are at now, and to show a little bit of where we're heading in the next months. Thanks.
Thanks a million, Sylvia. Yes, and for bringing that really important point about the decentralized goal of this campaign, to really not be something that just happens in Brussels, but that we do the role of helping to coordinate and mobilize so that when we do joint activities together here and in the capitals and wherever you are, to put pressure throughout the negotiation process. Thank you. And yet we will share the presentation. So I think we can take questions now. I think I see some questions coming in the chat, and I think we also have a document. We can check some other questions. So you can also raise your hand if you want to ask a question. And in the meantime, I will start looking through the ones that we have here. Oh, and our colleague has shared the Google sign-up form in the chat for anyone who asked for it. So there's firstly a good question from Susie from Bund. Young Bund, how long in advance do you think you can let us know about the date of the day of action? Because if we also want to mobilize on a local level, it might be helpful to know a bit in advance in order for local groups to be able to plan their presentation. Participation. Yes, indeed. This is something that we're very, very aware of, that we want to, because also if we want to have a really good joint coordinated action at some point, we need time to prepare that, not only to give you notice, but also we would like, when we do, for example, a day of action, to be able to share all the campaign materials, branded materials that we can have replicated or printed in country, for example, whether it's our comics or we've been discussing having stickers or, other nice campaign materials. We would like to get all these prepared and get them actually sent or produced in country. So all of that takes time. So yes, we do. We are very aware that we would give you as much notice as possible. So we would imagine a couple of months in advance, which is why doing something before the end of the year, we will look at the political calendar, but it would also be ideal to do it in early 2023. So we actually have that time to prepare properly. Great. So that is the only question that I can see now.
One question from Claire, sorry.
Claire above. How much work are you doing together with groups and communities internationally? Is there any involvement from Friends of the Earth international groups in supporting this campaign? I'd love to chat outside this as we're supporting the UK campaign from Friends of the Earth. Yes, so, well, one thing I can share with you, which I think we already shared in the chat, is, let me take the link. Oops, make sure I share it to everybody, not just tech support. So we did produce this comic as one of the first materials. We started working on this many, many months ago as part of as a campaign contribution from Friends of the Earth. This is about the human rights violations connected to the pipeline in Uganda. So as the campaign goes along, we are going to select some key cases to highlight throughout the campaign. So in that sense, we will be trying to spotlight ongoing cases and issues in ways that we can show solidarity through those cases. We'll probably have some key cases that we will select, like say 3 that we will use to really like explain the key goals and demands of the campaign. But what we would like to also do is to gather together far more cases that are ongoing. And so at some point we will probably send a survey where we will ask for input for groups to share about cases that they are working on, and we will try to spotlight in some way all of those throughout the campaign. And yeah, for the rest, I think the question is maybe a bit specific to the Friends of the Earth context, so perhaps we can talk about that separately as well. We have another chat here. Will the campaign page have petitions for different member state country governments, or one petition going to all governments? And does the steering group have priority countries for supporting organizations? So on the first point, the idea at the moment is that we will have, we're not calling it a petition so much as an engagement tool or a call to action. The idea being that in the first step in September, we will have a tool that everyone can share that would invite people to sign up to be a member of the campaign as an individual. And then we will gather together the overall number of people who sign up to be a member supporter of the campaign. And we will use that information, those numbers, not so much as a petition, but as a number of people supporting this campaign. And we will communicate that in some kind of innovative and creative ways. Say, for example, having a wall of names displayed, or we show the amount of support for the campaign. So it's not a petition per se, because we won't have like a target decision maker that we will be aiming that at, but it's going to be a broad sign up to support the campaign. And as for whether we'll have different ones, we'll have one overall, but the idea being that if certain groups want to make their own tool or use their own tool, they can do that, and that we can aggregate the total number of supporters in that way. And as for, we're actually working with WeMove to develop the overall tool, but others will be free to have complementary tools that we can aggregate. As for the other question, we don't have priority countries for supporting organizations because we welcome people from like every EU country and from beyond to support the campaign. And we think this is a legislation where we need support from across the EU. There are so many different issues and so many areas where we have allies and where we have blockers that, yeah, every country is going to be really, really important in this. I think we definitely need Central and Eastern Europe countries really involved because they have often been quieter on the due diligence side, but we know that they're going to be active in this council process. And we, of course, need from some of the Western countries who are already very active on due diligence, for example, France or the Netherlands or Germany. France and Germany, for example, having their own laws, we know they'll be very involved. So we also need engagement there. So it is hard to pick a priority. I think everywhere will be very important.
If I may add on that, I guess that strategically at some point we might have to invest more resources in mobilizing in one or the other member states, depending on where the political process is at. But just to reiterate what Jill was saying, we have right now a mapping of member states that it's really mixed. It is difficult to say. There are member states that are generally in favor of strengthening the legislation, but then when you go into the details, they are very diverse, and the allies are not such allies. So there will be topics that will become priorities to different member states, and maybe that's a way in which we would distribute or prioritize which topics are pushed in member states are not going to be the same as in others. So there can be some strategic thinking about that, like what are the topics that are more relevant in each national context. But indeed, for the overall of the directive, we will need mobilization all across in all the member states.
Thanks, Sylvia, and thanks for jumping in, because I forgot to say, please, my co-hosts, to add on or jump in at any point if you want to give some input or want to answer some questions. It's not just me rambling. I'm just going to look. I think we have another question, 2 more questions. So, is it necessary? Oh yeah, so concerning the supporting organizations to promote the campaign for example, events or initiatives, is it necessary to participate in the working groups? Will you share any guidelines on this process? Yeah, very, very good question. You are very welcome to be in the working groups, but supporting organizations do not have to participate in the working groups. It is also fine to disseminate materials. We will share information with the longer list. We have a specific mailing list for each working group where there'll be many conversations and more detailed conversations, planning and coordinating things. But then for information about every major event, that will be shared on the list of supporting organizations, where you will get forewarning, you will get the timelines, you will be told in advance of what the materials will be, and be given like social media kits or anything else, whether it's an online or offline action. We will endeavor to give you as much useful information as possible. So yes, you do not need to be involved in the working groups to be able to participate in the dissemination of the activities. I hope that answers that question. Are there any plans to bring stories, testimonies of affected people, not only to the public, but to decision makers? Before I jump on, again, a reminder to my 2 co-hosts to jump in if you want to answer anything. Yes, would there be plan to bring to decision makers? So this is a good question. So there is already existing an advocacy coalition working on due diligence, and this is something that we already endeavor to do. But yes, on top of creating communications materials, we will, as the negotiation process goes on, be very much bringing affected people's experience to decision makers in through events or through direct meetings. For example, Friends of the Earth had our colleagues from Friends of the Earth Mozambique here a few weeks ago, who met with several MEP assistants to talk about due diligence and to talk about the human rights crisis there. So this is something that will continue in the context of the campaign, as well as in the advocacy. We don't have specific activities yet. We're very, very focused on the launch at the moment, but this is something that we can also discuss in the working groups.
Maybe that's also part of where the case studies are important, will be important part of how we illustrate the need or the why for those specific demands. And in the case studies, it would be also important or central to have the voices of those involved, those in the front lines, as part of the case study, not like only the plain facts, but really showing the human faces of the impacts. So we probably, and I think that one of the other things that has been part of the strategizing and thinking is also bringing those stories more center into our media outreach. That's still to be developed, the whole media strategy, but to make it more part of what media is reporting on, rather than on, whether it's feasible or not for companies to do this or that, or like move the focus away from the red tape argument and into the real stories of people. Maybe if I can quickly respond the question of Katia, Jill, if that's okay, unless you wanted to say something else about the stories.
No, go for it.
Yeah, about the map of member states' positions, we currently do not have one in the context of the campaign. We have been working with one internally.
You could say what the question is.
Sorry?
If you could say what the question is.
The question is whether there is a map of member states' positions on various topics. I'm filling in the blanks. So yeah, we can work on something like that and maybe use it for the purpose of the campaign strategizing in the next meeting we have together. But this is something that we wouldn't make public at any stage. So we can work on it and maybe share it in confidence with the campaign members, if that helps. Although because we have the advocacy strategy on one side and the public facing campaign, so we need to constantly make those bridges, and the advocacy group has been working on identifying these member states and making this mapping that I think we can also will be relevant also to use and to share at some point with the campaign members if strategic.
Thanks. And Nicholas, I don't know if you wanted to add anything. You're good.
No, I think you've actually mentioned all of it. Nothing left to say. Thank you very much.
Great. Do we have any other questions? I see one additional point, an option of getting official supporting statements by civil society actors, NGOs, labor unions in countries, in countries outside Europe where corporations are harming. Yes, we definitely want to look at this, and there's an outreach working group which definitely wants to look at how we can bring external voices in and the different tools that we could use to bring those into the discussion, and certainly statements is one way we look at that. I will say I do hope the campaign comes up with other creative ideas as well, and and some offline activities too, and that we can actually get affected people like visiting Europe more to speak directly to decision makers about the experiences, as well as also getting more young activists to meet affected people and to come and speak to decision makers. And other things like this. I do not see any other questions at the moment. I think we shared the Google link to sign up in the chat. Maybe Yvonne can share it again. And I think you also have our email address. You have my email address. And you're very welcome to write to us with any other questions that you have. If you want to have a chat about the campaign, if we didn't explain anything that you still want to know about, want to ask us offline, that's also totally fine. So we are at 3:30 now. So I wonder if there's any final comments from my two co-hosts. And also, I want to again really thank our speakers for really, we were so delighted to not just have the three of us speak to you for an hour and a half about a EU legislation campaign, but to really try to make it more real and to contextualize it in the broader, exciting movement of mobilization of people for change, whether that's on the climate, whether it's on human rights, the environment, that it's all connected at the end of the day, and that this is one contribution to a massive struggle for a better world that we're trying to achieve. And we know this legislation won't change the world on its own, but we're very excited for the contribution that it actually can make to this process. So we are very, very excited to have you all with us. And feel free to get in touch. And thank you everyone for being here, and thank you to my co-hosts, and thank you to our speakers again. And